Hello everyone and welcome to the third episode of Which Switch. Today we'll be going over some Gatoron switches. I just want to give a shout out to Novel Keys for providing these switches. Check out novelkeys.xyz for a plethora of switches and switch testers. I'd also like to give a special thanks to Input Club and Hata for the force curve graphs that they provide to the community. With low prices and decent quality, Gatoron switches have become the bread and butter for many beginner boards and OEMs. Today, we're going to be looking at the 7 stock Gatoron switches, consisting of 1 tactile switch, 2 clicky switches, and 4 linear switches. The lone tactile switch in this lineup, the Gatoron Brown, is a switch many in the community will start with. It's a light switch with a small tactile bump. The 45-gram rating is a common rating people start at since there are also clicky and linear flavors with this weight. Looking at Hata's Plotly, the Gatoron Brown's peak tactile force is at around 48 grams force, but the actual actuation doesn't happen until after the bump at a light approximate 36 grams force. While the travel of the switch itself is smooth, the bump is often said to be described as so small. The switch feels like a linear with something stuck in it. It's understandable that many will start with the switch, and I don't blame them. It's also one of the switches people move away from the fastest. Personally, the Gatoron Brown's tactile bump is far too small for my preference, and that's always been described as the biggest downfall of any brown colored switch. If you want something light with a tickle of tactility, here you go. Next, let's go over the 2 clicky switches, the Gatoron Blue and Gatoron Green switches. With the blue, you can see the height of the bump is at approximately 60 gram force, while the Gatoron Green switch is at approximately 80 grams force. The actuation of the Gatoron Blue is approximate at its rated 45 grams, while the Gatoron Green is at around 65 grams. Both graphs look reasonably similar, with the force higher for the greens, but the blues do look a bit smoother according to these graphs. The blues have a very light feel to the touch. Unlike the click bars that I'm a fan of, the Gatoron Blues and Greens have to create their click sound with a traditional click jacket that goes around the stem. It gives more of a rattly kind of click. The Gatoron Green with its heavier spring actually actuates and it has more of a rattle sound than the blue. But to me, it ultimately does feel better due to the spring weight. Now we have the 4 Gatoron linear switches, the Gatoron Clear, Red, Yellow, and Black. Starting with the Gatoron Clear, this is the lightest switch in their lineup. So light, I find myself actuating keys by simply resting my fingers on them. Honestly, these Gatoron Clears don't feel like anything much to me, and the feel on them is extremely inconsequential. When I type on these, it feels like I'm more typing on whatever plate surface as opposed to the switches. They have no identity. The only identity is with how light they are. They're great if you're looking for the lightest switch. The Gatoron Reds are a very common switch rivaling Cherry and Kale Red switches. These actuate at their rated 45 grams force and bottoms out at approximately 55 grams. They're light and decently smooth. I'd say they're smoother than Cherry Reds, but that's a pretty low bar. It's a decent switch that'll get people introduced into the community. But if you want to step up to the big leagues, let's move on to Gatoron Yellows and Blacks. Gatoron Yellows have been widely regarded as a great budget linear if you're willing to do a little bit of work. Let's start with the spec sheet. Oh wait, Hata doesn't have a force curve graph of this one, so we'll have to settle for this low-res manufacturer one I found online. According to the spec sheet, Gatoron Yellows actuate at around 50 grams force and bottom out at 65 to 70 grams force. According to Ripster, it's at 65 grams, although the manufacturer force curve reads at around 70 grams. The popularity of Gatoron Yellows comes from their springs. Of all the Gatorons here, these are probably my favorite due to the spring. The spring feels a bit more uniform as you press the whole way as compared to Gatoron Blacks, which we'll be moving on to right now as they are modeled after the opposing Cherry and Kale Black switches, actuating at approximately 60 gram force and bottoming out at approximately 80. A tiny bit heavier than the Gatoron Yellows, these switches have also been well liked in the community. The heaviness of the bottom out leads to almost comforted soft landing as you go down. These switches, like the rest of the Gatoron linear line, are extremely smooth and extremely pleasant to type on. If I had to rank this collection of switches, I'd go from 1, 2, and 3, Gatoron Yellows, Gatoron Greens, and then Gatoron Blacks, with the rest of the lot in the tie for last place. This was a simple overview of Gatoron switches. Thank you for watching.